Guys, welcome to round one, the boxing show brought to you by Seconds Out. My name's Uni, and my co-host, who's going to be guiding you guys for the next couple of hours through the show, where we'll be talking to loads of guests. We've got about 10 guests lined up for the next 2 hours for you guys. Is none other than Danny Flex, and Danny's sat at home, unfortunately, due to the COVID situation that we're in and social distancing. Danny's probably in his pajamas at home. He looks all right, top up, but he looks probably in his pajamas. Danny, how you doing, mate? How's life?
Yeah, it's good. You say unfortunately, but I'm quite happy to be chilling out on the sofa doing this with you guys. We're better late than never. Obviously, we started a bit late. We apologise for that, but we're going to have a huge number of guests, and we've been covering a wide range of issues, so it'll be worth the wait.
First of all, I need to introduce one half of the dynamic duo in regards to promotional game in the world, none other than Nisa Sowland. Nisa, how you doing, mate? How's life treating you at the moment?
Yeah, I'm doing well. I managed to get a haircut, which is, always a bonus at these times. I won't say how I got that haircut, but no, doing very well, mate. Doing very well. Happy to be here.
Haircuts are like gold dust nowadays, mate, to be honest. So
Mate,
well done.
yeah.
Well done. And another person that we're bringing in for this first topic, and well, for the first two topics, is an unbeaten heavyweight prospect, someone who's been on Seconds Out on the watch along before, in George Fox. George, how you doing out there? How's the lockdown treating you?
Yeah, life is good. Some time to spend by myself, still training hard, just working on myself, and yeah, having some downtime. It's all good.
What are you doing at the moment? For fighters at this present time, obviously it's a bit of a difficult situation in regards to training. What are you up to at this present time?
Yeah, to be fair, it's been a good time to kind of reflect, go back to the drawing board. Just been working on putting a new schedule together. Sat down, well, I should say on Zoom with my team, and just put together, like a platform from everything from meditation to training to recovery. Just got a new schedule together, and we're ready to go. So yeah, it's been a good period.
Nisa, you started 2021 off with a bang, so it sort of fits into this topic of the return of boxing in 2021. You've recently announced the signing of none other than Chris Eubank Jr. Just talk to me about that, Nisa. How did that all come about?
So we've known the Eubanks for quite a long time. I think he fought quite a few years ago on a show of mine on an undercard in Denmark. Contact was made. Then he worked obviously with my brother on the Super Series, where they, especially him and Senior, built a good relationship, a trusting relationship. I think me and my brother, we were looking to make another sort of marquee signing, and we were sort of looking at the landscape of boxing, sort of, especially here in the UK, because I live here, and obviously there's the boom place right now, and we just looked at the best sign, let's say, outside of Fury and Joshua that was available, and to see who we had really good relationships, and that's Eubank. And I think marketability, name wise and talent wise, he's in the top five. Yeah, I mean, we're very happy. We're heading into 2021 with a very good signing. Fingers crossed to be able to actually run a show soon.
Nisa, you've obviously got Eubank Jr. coming out as soon as possible. I think your brother told me March, April time. But some of the promoters are already at the gates in the UK. Biggest fight so far that's been announced is Carl Frampton bidding to make history, be the first Irishman to win world titles at 3 different weights against Jamel Herring on February the 27th, I believe. And we'll talk about Eddie's schedule in a minute, because I know that's being announced later today. But Lisa, first with you, and then we'll move to George. What do you make of Herring Frampton, and who do you fancy it in what seems like a really intriguing fight?
I mean, Carl obviously, he started at Super Bantam. Did he start at Bantam or Super Bantam?
Super Bantam.
I know. Yeah, I know. I know Carl. I've seen him in the gyms. He's a very, very hard worker. I don't know that much about Herring. I know that he's you know, obviously, you know, where he is. He must be a very, very good fighter. But you know, I'm hoping Carl can do it. You know, three-weight world champ is quite an unbelievable feat. And you know, it's not the easiest weight classes. Those, like, you know, those little weight classes. A lot of competition there, and you know, I you know, good luck to Carl, and you know, I like him as a human, and also a lot as a boxer, and I think he's got a very good chance of doing it, making history.
What about you, George?
Yeah, I mean, like Nisa said, it's a huge opportunity to, you know, put his name in the history books. I mean, he's fighting. Again, I don't know so much about Herring. I know he's got a couple of losses on his record. He's been stopped once. He's a tall southpaw. I think he's 5'10", which at that weight is pretty pretty long. So I don't know how he will negate that challenge. But yeah, you know, all the luck to him, all the blessings to him, and hopefully he can do that and create history.
George, just talking about heavyweights then, it seems
Now, before we...
Sorry, Danny. George, just talking about heavyweights, being a heavyweight yourself, March the 6th, it looks like Dillian Whyte, Alexander Povetkin is going to be announced a rematch. It's been delayed forever. We know Povetkin got, you know, COVID-19, so he's a lot better now. It seems that fight's going to be on for March the 6th. Just talk to me about that one quickly. How do you see that one playing out?
Yeah, I mean, I'll always side with the UK man, Dylan, someone I know personally, someone I've sparred with, someone I've been around for, you know, for almost 10 years, to be fair, in and around. And he just needs to make a few adjustments. I mean, he was dominating that fight before it ended in that dramatic fashion. But, you know, I'm siding with Dylan. I believe he can make the adjustments necessary. Povetkin's always a dangerous man, especially mid-range, close range, and explosive single punch knockout artist, as we've seen. So it's always going to be a tough night, but I believe Dylan will make the necessary adjustments to get a W.
Anissa, with yourself, we saw what Povetkin did on the night. It produced probably one of the greatest knockouts of 2020. Do you think he can do it again?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I mean, you know, we promoted Povetkin out of the Olympics. I think it was the 2004 Olympics where he got gold. So we know him well. Obviously, he's 41 now. Yeah. Look, you know, like George said, Dillian was winning that fight, but whoever says that was a lucky punch, you know, it needs to check their facts. He was lining that shot up the whole fight. And I've seen him throw that punch a lot of times. I thought that disappointingly for Dillian, he was looking the best he'd ever looked.
Yeah,
true.
100%.
However, he switched off for a second. He got caught, and whatever everyone slated Dillian after the fight. Oh, you know, everyone jumped on not everyone, but a lot of people jumped on the bandwagon to slag him off after he got knocked out. The thing is, the guy actually takes fights, you know, and he shouldn't. Whatever your thoughts on him, yeah, he should not. That's what I want to see. I want to see 50-50 fights, and Dillian's not scared of that. And I think that's what should be encouraged more and more, and especially at times like these, you don't get many opportunities as a fighter. I'm telling all my fighters this. I'm saying, look, be 4 to 5 weeks out from a big shot, because you don't know what's going to happen at the moment. You don't want to get a 2-month, 3-month camp at the moment. Things are going to happen quickly. Be ready, you know, stay ready, and take the opportunity when it comes. Don't ask for another bloody tune-up. Come on, you know, take your chance. I
think a few promoters have said that in this COVID era that there isn't many warm-up fights, there isn't many tune-up fights no more, because you're on TV, and I'm sure, you know, with the slots that people are getting, they need to make it worthwhile nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just like, is that Natasha Jonas in my screen? Hi, Tash. Yeah, I'm freaking. Yeah. Hi, how are you? You just keep popping up at me. How are you? All right? Sorry.
Yeah, I'm fine too.
You threw me a little bit. I was like, why would I ask him Tash? Yeah, no. Listen, like I said, I think we need to, you know, at the moment, it's obviously the ecosystem of boxing's a bit set back. You know, I feel sorry for the kids who are hoping to make it as a boxer and are giving up on their dreams and becoming, let's say, a trainee plumber or something that's a reliable, good job. Because we might be missing out on a next big thing at the moment, and obviously the small hall scene plays such a big part of boxing, and we're missing that at the moment. We're missing that, and I think we're going to be missing out on a lot of big stars if we don't hurry up and get some sort of kind of subsidy towards these small hall shows, or the government needs to help. We need to run our talent. We need to get our talent. That's enough of my rant.
Danny,
I actually think. Sorry.
As much as I could listen to Nisa all day, I'm afraid this is going to be the first of a number of heartbreaking goodbyes for round one.
All right.
As we're going to move on to our next Georgie guy to weights, and I don't want to argue with him. But Nisa, thanks very much.
Cheers, guys.
Best of luck with the Eubank.
See you, Nisa.
All right, George. All right,
Take it easy, Nisa. See you soon, man.
Cheers, guys. How do I get out of this? Right.
And now it's time for some heavyweight happenings. Mr. George Fox, who's already with us, and Mr. David Adelaide, welcome.
David is just coming on. We can't see David at the moment, but David is there, guys. He's lurking about somewhere. We're just putting him on screen for you guys. But David, how's it going, man? It's been a long time. I saw you maybe about 2 months ago when you last fought. How you doing? How's life? No, you can't hear him yet. He's not on the screen. You can't hear him yet. No, at the moment, actually, we can't actually get David on. David, just wait 1 minute. We are trying to put you on there. Just give us 1 second, mate. We're just trying to get you on there right now. Danny, whilst we're waiting for these guys to be put on screen, just going to introduce the segments. We're going to be talking about possibly the biggest fight of 2021 if it gets made, and there's a lot of positive talks coming out for both promoters in regards to Bob Arum and Eddie Hearn in regards to the Tyson Fury versus Anthony Joshua fight. If there was one fight that boxing fans wanted in 2021, I'm sure that's the fight that they want. Danny, just talk to me about that quickly. It's been back and forth. They both met each other. I think it was in Marbella as well. They had a little bit of a talk. They said, I think the sort of gist of that conversation was, you keep winning, I'll keep winning, and we'll meet at some point in 2021. Danny, what do you make of that fight?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great fight. It's a fight we all want to see. It'll be the biggest money fight Britain's ever seen. And the two guys we've got on now, George Fox and David Adelaide, I believe have sparred both men in relatively recent times. So it'd be really good to hear their take. And I know I've interviewed them both individually in the past, and I think they've both sat resolutely on that fence and not picked between the two of them. But now the fight's getting closer, I'm hoping we can press them for predictions.
David, so obviously David and George, we can see on the screen. David, just welcoming you to sort of the live show that we've got going on at this present time. We brought you in for this segment of Fury versus Joshua because you know both fighters quite well. Talk to me about that fight, man. You've been sparring both guys quite recently as well. What do you see from both guys, and what do you think can happen on the night?
Yeah. It's heavyweight boxing. So it was all up in the air, to be fair. Nobody really knows. Joshua's got advantages, Fury's got advantages. But both like I've already said, I'm sitting on the fence as a fan, and I think the fight we can probably give my prediction. But as of now, I'm just sitting.
Is there space on that fence for George Fox, or is he going to have to make a prediction, George?
Listen, that fence is a big old fence, man. So there's a few of us on that fence. I can bring a few more on there as well that I know. But yeah, no, like David said, I know both fighters very well. Heavyweight boxing, AJ, very athletic, powerful, fighter. Fury, high boxing IQ, high boxing intelligence. Just have to see how they prepare, how their camps go, and I mean, a lot of people are fancying Fury. I mean, AJ's got his strengths as well. He's a student of the sport, and he's always, you know, testing himself, trying to push his limits and improve fight on fight. So we'll see what happens. It's going to be a good one.
All right,
I'll be watching that one as a fan.
Let me ask you guys another question, because you both sort of sparred both fighters. When you stepped into the ring with Tyson Fury, for example, what impressed you the most about Tyson Fury? First of all, David, can you answer that one for me?
What, you don't want George to go first?
all right, George, go on. You go first, George. We asked David last time.
I don't. Okay. I mean, Tyson is like got a high boxing IQ. Sets up his shots very well. Great feint game, great jab game, great distance control. Yeah, he's good timing. You know, he's a boxer's boxer. So, and he's improved his intensity. Working with Sugar, the intensity is a lot, you know, a lot harder that they bring now. It's more intense. They're looking to try and get people out the ring. It's not so much about flicking and moving. It's more, you know, standing your ground, being authoritative, being assertive. So yeah, that's what I've seen from Tyson.
Then what about Joshua? What have you seen from him?
I mean, I haven't been around him lately. I know people that sparred him lately. AJ's ever improving. He's a student of the sport. He's always keen to learn, eager to improve himself. He's not someone that gets comfortable and settles for like boundaries. He's always trying to break those barriers down and add to his game. So you can never write him off. He's someone who's highly ambitious. So yeah, we'll see.
David,
David, you've had the prompt now. So what are you going to tell us about the two guys? What's impressed you the most about
them? So I mean, like George said, Tyson's man with a high IQ, good at boxing. You go in there with him as the feints, you know, it's the jab, is a good stiff jab. He doesn't really waste a lot of shots. You know, he won't throw shots if he doesn't think they're gonna land or be effective. So with him, he thinks about everything, he does it. And of course with Joshua, I think Joshua's starting to learn how to really use his boxing skills more. I mean, we all know he's got the power, so I think now just using his boxing skills a bit more rather than just trying to blow people out of there. So I mean, look, you got Tyson working on his strength, and you've got Joshua on his box. It's a real good one.
And before we let you guys go and round off the heavyweight segment, tell us, we'll start with George, because I know David doesn't like to go first. We've learned that in the last 10 minutes. What is your big ambition for 2021? Where do you want to be by the end of this year?
Yeah, I mean, we've got some promotional news landing soon. So these things always take a bit longer than expected. So just get back in the ring. For me, I'm in a different place to David in the sense that he's obviously got that momentum at the moment. He's been fighting regularly. I need to get back in the ring. I've been out there for too long. I miss it. I want to go have some fun, do what I love. So yeah, we'll be back in the ring shortly. We're hoping for March. We'll get some news relatively soon, and that's it. Get that consistency and start knocking on the door from, you know, some of these other guys in the division.
And you, David?
For me, just to stay as active as possible, you know, get more experience, and yeah, man, hopefully start getting closer to these title fights. And you know, if Joyce, you know, vacates that British, I think that's an easy fight for me and Nathan Gorman to be made. I'm not going to start rushing into certain fights or start calling people out, but you know, these are fights I'd love to be involved in.
Great stuff. Well, guys, really appreciate your time joining us for this live show. We hope we can welcome you back for the next one we do as well. And very best of luck with the rest of your training camps.
Definitely.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah,
can you guys see me?
Yeah, we can see you.
Danny, great first two topics, first two segments, with both guys, George and David. Moving on now. They're still in the background. They're trying to.
Yeah, just close the window.
I think they're out. I think they're both. All right.
Take it.
David, take it, mate.
Live TV, folks.
It's just teething problems at the moment, but it's not a problem. Danny, just moving on to the next topic. We did have sort of glimpse of Natasha Jonas. She's actually joining us for the
tantalizing glimpse. Yeah.
Yeah. But we're going to be talking about female boxing. We know in 2020 that there was a rise, you know, and Natasha Jonas was one of the people who fought in one of the most memorable fights in 2021 against Terry Harper. So, Danny, just building up to this segment, what are you expecting this year? Because last year, female boxing left on such a high.
Yeah, I mean, it was amazing. And I'm hoping that the fact that, you know, the vaccine's out, the pandemic's easing, you're going to see more male boxers out and high-profile male boxers out. I'm hoping that doesn't take away from the growth and the development of female boxing that we saw last year, because they did really prove on the biggest stages that they are very entertaining, very professional, very skilled, and worthy of the platform they were given. And I hope that continues to grow in 2021.
Cool. I think we're just awaiting Tasha Jonas, who's supposed to be joining us for this sort of segment. At the moment, she's not there, but we've got Ali Drew, who's a presenter. She's presented on Seconds Out before. She does a lot of presenting work and interviews a lot of fighters. So Ali, thank you very much for joining us. I think we're having technical difficulties with Ali as well.
We're going to have to manage the female boxing segment with no females the way this is looking.
I think there's just a few teething problems here at the moment. So it's not an issue. It just seems like people's internet might not be up to scratch at this present time. So we're hoping to get that fixed. But at this present time, Dan, let's talk about that. What was the fight that you thought stood out for yourself in regards to female boxing in 2020?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to look past the Natasha Jonas, Terry Harper fight, of course. You know, there's a bit of controversy in whether it was, you know, really a draw or not. But just an excellent fight, fought at a very high level. I think the skill level was very high. It wasn't just a good scrap and they belted into each other for 10 rounds. You know, they showed real excellent technique. Natasha Jonas, obviously former GB Olympian, Miss GB, trained by Joe Gallagher. And I think Terry Harper has just improved leaps and bounds with each fight. And she looked even better in her second fight of the year. She fought 3 times last year, which a lot of boxers failed to do. Won the world title, of course, against Ava Wallström. And then retained, albeit with a draw, against Natasha. And then fought again and looked excellent when she faced her mandatory contender, Katrina Tandon, towards the end of the year. So a great year for her. I think for Jonas as well, there were no losers in that fight, literally and figuratively, because she put her name on the map and people finally realised that amateur pedigree is translated to the professional side.
For sure. I think the one that stood out for me especially was Savannah Marshall. I think she was on the undercard of the Derek Chisora fight, maybe. I can't remember what it was one of the pay-per-view cards. And she was fantastic. With Peter Fury in the corner, she can go far. But I think we have got Ali Drew on at this present time, who's going to be joining us. Ali, welcome. How are you? Hello, Ali, can you hear us?
Hi, I'm good, thank you. Having some technical problems, so typical.
It's all right. It's a live show. Me and Danny are just made to be look like right fools at this present time. We're talking about female boxing without any females on the show, but we're glad to have you on. How's life treating you, first of all?
Yeah, not too bad. Obviously, just in lockdown, trying to make the most of what we can, I guess. Can't wait for boxing to return. It's good news that it's coming back. So, yeah, just doing what I can.
I think we've got a bit of a delay on Ali's connection, which is fine. It means we can get away with saying whatever we want in the gap. On the plus side, as for Natasha Jonas, she was with us for the earlier sections. Obviously,
I can't hear you very well at all.
She appears to have dropped off. But yeah, so Ali, we were talking about female, but Tasha Jonas has now joined us again, I believe. Tasha, how are you? We were just singing your praises and saying how your memorable fight with Terry Harper, how you finally proved to all the doubters that were out there that your amateur pedigree has very much translated to the professional game.
You know, it is experience, and it is, you know, boxing at its elite highest level. And, you know, a lot of amateur females have turned over and are now world champions and challenging for titles. So that just shows you how good the female amateur game is.
How did it feel to be part of a wider kind of movement as well? Obviously, when you're in the fight, that's all you're focusing on. But female boxing had a massive year in 2020, and yours was, you know, foremost among it because it main evented a Sky Sports show. So how did it feel being part of that greater female boxing movement, if you like?
I mean, breaking down barriers is something that we've done all the way along. You know, not just myself, but the likes of Nikki Adams, Savannah Marshall, Chantel Cameron, and yeah, that's just something that we've, as you say, you don't realise what you're doing when you're in the moment because you're an athlete only looking at the result. But when you step back, or like after my amateur career, I moved away, and you know, I had time out. I look back on it and thought, you know, we did something great there, and it's the same now as pros. You know, we was up for fight of the year, and considering, you know, maybe a year ago or before Katie Taylor was there, Jane Coach was fighting with the actual ball to even get us there. It's massive. It's a massive movement.
Tasha, how do you feel boxing and female boxing in general needs to progress now? We know in 2020 had a massive year, but the last thing you guys want as female fighters for it to go stale. So what would you expect to happen in 2021?
I think every sport has their eureka moment. So, you know, female football had it in the World Cup and the Europeans before that. Netball had it in the Commonwealth Games. Hockey had it in the last Olympics. And once you get that eureka moment, like ours is now, you have to roll with it and you have to, you know, ride the crest of the wave. So we need the backing of big promoters like Matchroom. We need the backing of big broadcasters like Sky. We need every public media outlet to be positive, and you know, we need the backing of big corporate sponsorships as well. And you know, while it is it got that like movement, we need to keep it going and keep it being positive, because we've kind of broken down the barriers now of, is women's boxing as good as men's? We've done that. We've been through that now. Majority of people are on side. We don't have to break down that barrier. Now we just need to pushing it and progressing it in the right direction.
Just want to then talk about yourself quickly then in regards to that. Your fight was probably one of the most memorable fights of 2020 against Terry Harper. A lot of people saw that as a very close fight. Some people I spoke to give it to yourself. Some people give it to Terry. But for yourself, is there been talks in regards to when that fight's going to, or the rematch is going to happen on that?
No, in short, no, there isn't any. Obviously, it's quite well, you know, publicised that myself and Matchroom couldn't agree on a 3-fight deal. Because I didn't agree to the 3 fights, that means none of the fights happened, which meant there was no contract. You know?
Oh, it looks like we may have briefly lost Tasha there. That was obviously Eddie Hearn hacking in. Cutting her mic before it was too late. Memories of CM Punk there. Oh, she's back.
I was like, oh yeah, because of the COVID, obviously, it's going to be a struggle, like you were saying earlier, to get on shows, because everybody is fighting for a place. You know, the small hall people who were contracted to Matchroom are fighting for their place. People on small hall shows are fighting for their chance to be on TV. And I think the boxing board could be instrumental here, because in the first lockdown, they shut the borders so no international fights could happen. And that meant that all the British fights had to fight British people. And that, if that happens again, that could be massive for British boxing. And they could help boxers out by doing that.
Oh, I want to ask Ali as well. Ali, you're a pioneer in your own right for female presenters of sport. You know, it's not something 20 years ago we ever used to see, and now there's a huge swathe or swath of talented females fronting sports programming now. What does it mean to you, the year that boxing had in 2020? Because it's kind of caught up to that side of things. Now the female fighters are getting the platform they deserve as well.
Yeah, I think it's obviously it's just on an even playing field. You know, there's no reason why presenters, female boxers shouldn't just be on the same level as men. You know, I think that it's taken a long time. It's still not there. But I do think that 2020 was a big year for that development. Obviously, you know, with the first women's world title triple header, you know, going on, there's been massive advancements in not that long. So yeah, I think that from now it's just only going to get better, to be honest. And obviously, it's great to see so many women in the media side.
Great stuff. We appear to have temporarily lost Natasha again. I think our system can only handle one strong woman at a time, it appears. No such sexism here from Uni and myself. But yeah, hopefully we'll get Tasha back so we can at least say a proper goodbye. But we're going to be talking momentarily about the red hot 135-pound division and what we can expect from that in 2021. And Uni, I know it excites you just as much as it does me.
Mate, if you're a boxing fan and you're not excited about the lightweight division, then you've got to seriously have some words with yourself, because for me, there is a division like that. Heavyweight division's got a lot of great fighters. We know the welterweights have always been great. But when you're looking at the lightweights, you're looking at 4 to 6 really high-class, top-quality fighters. Obviously, the two that stand out for myself are going to be Teofimo Lopez and Gervonta Tank Davies. Gervonta Davis, we saw what he did against Leo Santa Cruz, was just probably the knockout of the year for me. And he's just improving every time he's fighting. And Teofimo Lopez, just an absolute beast. He showed what he could do against Lomachenko. Everyone that I spoke to leading up to that fight had Lomachenko winning that fight. And Teo just came up on the night and absolutely just took the fight away from Lomachenko. So it's packed out. We look at the other names in that division. We got Ryan Garcia, who's fought recently. We got Devin Haney. And then who else is there, Danny?
Devin Haney, Garcia, Teofimo Lopez, and Tank Davis are the kind of what is it they were called? The new Fab Four, someone said.
Exactly. So when you look at the level of fighters in that division, especially them four, it's exciting, man. It's very, very exciting to hopefully at some point in 2021, maybe 2022, we can start seeing these guys mix it up and, you know, fight each other in the ring.
We're hoping to soon be joined by someone who's bidding for the British lightweight title on at the end of February in Liam Walsh. He's just logging in at the moment. So we'll speak to him about that. He's obviously fought Tank Davis as well. But Ali, what do you make of the lightweight division as it stands at the moment? And how impressed are you with Ryan Garcia, especially after his recent win over Luke Campbell?
I think Ali's frozen. I think she's having some sort of
Can you hear
technical
me okay?
difficulties. So just whilst Ali's trying to sort of regain some sort of connection, Danny, yeah, just
we hadn't noticed.
we can't see her at this present time, but I'm sure she's still there. But Danny, just talking about this division whilst people are getting back on the lightweight division, you're talking about Ryan Garcia. I think against Luke Campbell, he answered a lot of questions for a lot of people. He showed heart. He got dropped, came back, and then for me, there was points in that fight where he had to sort of look for a plan B because Luke Campbell was, I thought Luke Campbell fought well on the night, but we know, his fast hands. They were great on the night. That knockout was phenomenal. It's one of the best knockouts that we're going to see when it comes to body punching knockouts. But there's still a lot of questions in regards to him. But that's what probably makes him so exciting at this present time. But he stepped up to the plate, fought a high level opposition and beat him. So I've got to say Ryan Garcia at this present time is somebody that the division is going to have to watch out for, and especially with that massive social media following, he is going to be able to pull some strings at some point.
Yeah, well, we both know how important a big social media following can be, and loads of braying like female fans as well. We're used to that by now. But yeah, all joking aside, I think he proved against Luke Campbell that he is the real deal now. And I think Liam Walsh has just joined us. Liam, how you doing?
he's not
I'm
on
good.
at
I
this
was just waffling on, but I'm glad someone with a bit of, real intelligence and insight has joined the call.
He's not actually on at this present time. Just it'll be on in about a minute's time. We can't actually hear Liam at this present time, but we are
Oh, okay.
bringing him on
Only
to
I
this
can
one.
hear you.
So yeah, Danny, just going back to that then. Ryan Garcia has probably been somebody that a lot of boxing fans were waiting for him to step up to the plate, and he did. You can talk about the performance on the night about Luke Campbell and how well Luke Campbell did, but it shows how well and how great a fighter Ryan Garcia can be. He's only 22 years old, right?
Yeah, and he was arguably winning the fight.
Yeah.
And kind of at his own sort of pace, and he could have stayed safe and kept him. He'd already been knocked down as well, so you kind of think, well, should he have taken the risk? But he showed what his mentality is by still going for the stoppage. I mean, that left hook to the body, it was such an aggressive move as well with his feet to get in position and just whipped it round. And I think no one's done that to Luke Campbell before. I think that's a big statement.
100%. We were talking about Gervonta Tank Davis. We've obviously got a former opponent of his online now in Liam Walsh. Liam, welcome to the show.
Hey mate, you okay?
All good. How are you? How's life treating you at this present time?
Yeah, good. Thanks, mate. Yeah, all's good. Still training every day and doing what I've got to do, and yeah, everything's good. Thank you.
You got your British lightweight title shot, hoping to become a two-weight British champion in February against Paulie Highland Jr. Not the James Tennyson fight that was originally mandated, of course, but you've got his stablemate instead. So will you get, if you win, will you get a bit of kind of delayed satisfaction from beating that camp?
Not really. It's not really personal in any way at all. I'd have preferred to fight, obviously, James Tennyson, as he was the bigger name of the two, and I'd have got more props for beating James than I would Paul Highland Jr., obviously. But and it would have also set me up for bigger fights in the future. But Paul's still a good fight. Paul's I've watched enough of Paul, and I've known Paul for long enough to know that I'm in a real fight. So I definitely won't be underestimating him.
When you see the so-called Fab Four at the top of the lightweight division globally at the moment, how much do you relish getting back up to that world level so you can oppose some of these guys?
If I'm going to be brutally honest here, Danny. Right now, sat here speaking to you, I find it very difficult to believe I'll be back amongst them. If I'm honest, that's put down. The first you called makes it look like. But I just find out I don't see where the opportunities are going to come from. I'm obviously very confident I'm going to win my next fight, as I am every fight I go into, as all fighters are. But I'm then sort of struggling to think, well, how am I going to get a leg up? How's it going to happen? Obviously, boxing is a funny sport and things can change very quick. And I don't know. Maybe I'm being a bit pessimistic, but right now I'm looking at them and I'm thinking, do I ever see me getting another crack anywhere near that? I'm not so sure. We'll see.
Well, hopefully the guys at MTK Global are watching this and take your doubts as a challenge and make sure that you get right out there. Apparently they're negotiating a huge fight for Maxie Hughes at the moment, as someone who you've defeated, of course. So you would think that they'll be doing similar for you very soon.
Yeah, no, I'm sure if it can be done, then I'm with the right people to get the job done. If there's opportunities there, then MTK will get them. I know that's for sure. But I don't know. Maybe we've not, like, we're fighting only Maxi really in the last 3 years. It just seems so far away at the minute. But I thought I'm gonna win my next fight, and then I'll probably be a bit more confident in the future. But we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Liam, just talking about that Fab Four then, who do you see being the best fighter out of them? We're looking at Teofimo Lopez, Gervonta Tank Davis, Devin Haney, and Ryan Garcia. In your eyes, you've probably seen these guys fight. We know that you've fought Gervonta Davis yourself, but who do you think's the best amongst them four?
I think Teofimo, personally. I don't know. I think Tank can knock any of them out. I do believe that. I think Teofimo's the man. I do. After watching him against Lomachenko, and not only Lomachenko, Richard Comey as well, and even a few of his other fights. I just think he's the man. He's the bigger man of the lot. I know Garcia's big, but Teofimo's real big. He's a big lightweight. I just see Teofimo as the man to beat. But although if Teofimo and Tank fight, you could never write Tank off from knocking him out. You can't write Tank off from knocking any man out up to probably 135. You can't, he's got a chance to knock anyone out. But I fancy Tefimo. I see that you see the little clip of Tank and Tefimo sparring, and Tefimo I think's only 15 at the time or 16. He's only a kid, but you see there with his aura and his attitude, he ain't taking no rubbish off him, and I just fancy at the minute. I think Tefimo's the best of the lot.
What did you make of Teofimo's fight against Lomachenko? I spoke to a lot of people leading up to that fight, and a lot of people had Lomachenko winning that fight, and they said, you know what, maybe first couple of rounds Teofimo might get a bit of success, but then after that Lomachenko would beat him. But it turned out to be very, very different to that. In your eyes, how impressive was that performance in regards to 2020? Because when I look at that performance, I think it was probably one of the most outstanding performances in regards to boxing in 2020. But for yourself, how did you rate Teofimo's win over Lomachenko?
I was well impressed. I'm a massive Loma fan, and I thought it'd be a routine win for Lomachenko. Yeah, I've got to be honest. I didn't see anybody in the world beating Lomachenko up to 135, and I thought Teofimo did beat him. I've only watched it the once, like probably most of us have. Hadn't gone back and watched it without commentary and really sat there and concentrated. But on the night, I certainly thought Teofimo had done enough, and it weren't so much as Lomachenko didn't do enough. I think Teofimo boxed the right, and he told us all before the fight. He said, "I'm going to back him up. I'm going to, he done he talked." What people say, a lot of rubbish, a lot of shit, whatever they want to say, but he backed it all up, and you can only tip your hat to him.
And Ali Drew, if you can now hear us, want to know who you think is the best of the Fab Four, so-called Fab Four at lightweight?
I think we're having technical difficulties with Ali, unfortunately.
I don't see how you could sort of bet against Lopez, to be honest. I think most think would win that fight, but I just you could say what he did to Lomachenko, that he wouldn't then just be able to rule the whole.
Okay, I think we're sort of having problems with Ali, so unfortunately we are going to either try to reconnect her or we'll see what happens with Ali at this present time. But yeah, Liam, just going back to yourself then, we know the top two fighters, when you cut it down from them four, is Teofimo and Gervonta Tank. But then after that, you've got Ryan Garcia and Devin Haney. What do you make of them two young fighters?
I highly rate them both. Obviously, they're both, I wouldn't say elite fighters yet, but they're both very, very, very good world level fighters. I think they've got elite attributes. Ryan Garcia's speed and that left hook is elite. It's special. But for me, Ryan Garcia is probably the weakest of the four, I'd say personally. Although if he fights Haney, I give him a shot to win, but I'd slightly favour Haney. If he fights Tank, I give him a small shot to win, but his height, his reach, his speed, he's up there. He's got. It's such a good. They've got four really, really, really good fighters here, and I as a massive boxing fan, I so hope these fights get made, because we're all sat here on the edge of our seats, hoping and praying that these fights get made, and we've got a real opportunity in boxing to get these fights made and get boxing back out there like the old days, where the best fought the best because they wanted to be the best, not for money, not for business, because they wanted to be the best. Let's make these fights. I hope these fights get made. If they don't, I'll be disappointed.
Right, Liam, want to thank you for joining us and wish you the very best of luck with the rest of your training camp. We'll be watching the fight, obviously, with Paulie Highland.
Thank you.
And we're gonna crack on with our next segment, but really, really appreciate it.
Yeah. Can I say hello to Denzel before we go?
Yeah, of course you can.
Denzel, how's it going? Can you hear me?
I'm not sure if he can hear you.
I'm good, man. How you doing?
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah,
I can hear you. Yeah.
I'll see you soon. I think I'm coming
Take care, mate.
down your way soon. I'll see you soon, mate. Yeah.
Take care, Liam, mate.
I'll see you on a bit. Thank you.
Take care.
See you in a bit. Cheers.
All right, take care.
Well, looks like he's already joined us, but Denzel Bentley, everyone, the champion is here. Denzel, how's it going? How's life? I know you you went back home for a bit to enjoy some time in the sun after your win over Mark Heffron. How was that
Yes.
for yourself?
Lovely, man. It was needed. It was lovely. I enjoyed it. Back to the ground now. Got some unfinished business, and I need to take care of it. So I'm back.
Before you actually talk about the grind, let's talk about your trip out there. I saw a couple of pictures of you showing your British title out to Azuma Nelson, and there was pictures of you showing a certain tribe's king or a chief the belts, and there was other people of royalty that you were showing the belts out to. How was that trip out there? How did it feel when people sort of embraced you as a champion?
It felt good. It felt good. It kind of made me realize that, like this is what comes with it. So the bigger I get, the bigger all of that gets. So it added a little bit of pressure, but like good. Like cool. I gotta make not the family now. Everyone that I've introduced into this world, or everyone that's accepted me into their world, make them proud, and just continue to do what I'm doing, because everyone that I met, was proud of me, proud of my achievements. So, next time I'm out there, I gotta go there with another belt, or with more achievements or something.
Denzel, you mentioned getting back to the grind and unfinished business. We know the Boxing Board of Control orders came out this week, putting to purse bids a fight between yourself and the Commonwealth champion, Felix Cash. But there's immediately been skeptics on social media saying the fight's not going to happen because you're with rival promoters. What can you tell us?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's just on a bit of a delay.
There's a bit of a delay, it's fine.
Yeah, cool. Oh, cool. So, for me personally, I'm game. I'll take it. I've spoken in a few interviews talking about I'd fight Felix Cash. I haven't heard in any interviews him saying he would fight me. Not saying that he wouldn't. I'm just saying that I'm more keen to fight him than he is me, innit? So at the end of the day, things can get made. Rival promoters doesn't really mean anything. How many fighters have you seen fight on other shows? Especially the fact it's gone to purse bids. It just means that both promoters are either gonna bid, or they're gonna, or someone's gonna pull out their fighter. I'm not vacating my belt, so the fight's gonna have to go on my side. The promoters ain't got to work together to try and put a show on. It's whoever wins the bid, and whoever wins the purse bids gets the fight. So in that sense, it should be easier to get made. It's not like both promoters are having to speak to each other and having to talk about, okay, let's what can we do here to make this? It's going to purse bids. Whoever wins the purse bids, the fight gets made. So hopefully that's the situation. No one gets pulled out the purse bids, and we get to have the fight.
I hope we get to see that fight. It's going to be a great fight nonetheless. You were one of the success stories of 2020, winning that title, whilst a lot of other people didn't fight. But another story, or one of the biggest things that came out of 2020, was the exhibition fight that took place between Roy Jones Jr. and Mike Tyson. It looks like 2021, we might be seeing a lot more of that. We've seen Evander Holyfield, who seems to be training, calling out Mike Tyson. What do you make of this rise of exhibition fights that seem to be happening and look to be happening in 2021?
I think they're quite funny. I think the first time I heard it was KSI and Logan Paul. And I think I was on the same side as everyone else. Disrespecting the sport and blah, 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 all that rubbish. But at the end of the day, it's just a bit of fun, man. It's nothing serious. It's an exhibition. You don't go on no one's record. No one's trying to be a world champion out of it. It just is what it is. Like, let it be fun. If you don't want to watch it, then don't put it on there. Like, it's as simple as that. No one's forcing it down your throats. It's not taking the limelight off of real fights. It's not taking the dates off of real fights. It's not taking the money off of real fights. It just is what it is. People just want to get in there and have fun and do what they do. If they got in the gym and done it in the gym, would it be a problem? No. So let them do what they're doing.
So Denzel, with that in mind, non-boxers, celebrities, who out there, if you could pick anyone, would you like to have an exhibition fight with? Who would you most like to punch?
Me? Nah, I don't know. I'm worried about real fighters and like being the world champion. Maybe when I'm retired, you can ask me that when I want to have a bit of fun. But right now, I need to achieve my goals before I start thinking about all of that celebrity stuff. I need to become who I feel like I can become. But I'm not writing off. Maybe when I'm retired one day, I might feel like, hey, let's have a little dance around for me. But Right now, nah, I'm not focused on that.
Actually, Denzel, before we let you go, I want your opinion on YouTubers fighting. We saw Jake Paul was on the undercard of Mike Tyson and Roy Jones Jr., and we know the sort of numbers that he attracts. Is it a good thing for boxing? Is it a bad thing for boxing? There's been many debates on different platforms. What's your take on it?
Like I said, if they just keep it fun and do what they're doing, there's nothing wrong with it. He's quite good. He just got that knockout he had that day was a bit. That's better knockouts than I've seen in a real fight, a real boxing fight. But obviously, he's fighting someone that's never boxed before. But if he's really trying to box and become a champion and, you know what I'm saying, like excel in the sport, it takes a lot more than just, you know, putting on a 6-rounder and trying to go for another YouTuber. But at the end of the day, they'll find out eventually. If they want to do it, go for it. Do it. He's young enough. Feel free. If he wasn't a YouTuber and he just tried to box and he won the title, you look, everyone in the boxing would be like, oh, he's done well to come from no amateur fights to do this and blah, blah, blah. But it's because, you know, people are feeling like he's taking all the money. He's not. People that are watching are YouTubers. Like, I see it as boxing is for nobody apart from the guys that dare to do it. It's not for the rich. It's not for the poor. It's not for this. It's not for that. It's not for anyone. It's for anyone that dares to do it. And if he dares to try and be great, tell him to go for it. If he's not good enough, he'll find out. If he is, we'll find out. That's just how it is. That's how I see it.
Listen, before we let you go for this segment, what do you want to happen in 2021? What's your ideal plan for 2021?
2021. I don't know. I don't know. There's a lot of things. There's so much in mind that I feel like I want to do this year. I want to defend my title. I want to box for the European. I want to move closer to a world title by the end of the year. It's just, you know, like, you have things in your mind, but when you achieve something, it's like more things pop in your mind. Like, oh, damn, I've got the British now. Just open doors for so many other avenues. And you just look at all the avenues that open the doors for. Like, I'm world ranked. I'm highly ranked in Britain. There's good domestic fights I can have. There's potential risks I can take to get higher ranked in the world rankings. But I think originally, I'd like to defend my British. Don't matter how many times, once, 3 times, I might just defend it, fight for the European, and then eventually, by the end of the year, move on closer towards, you know, maybe a world title.
Good stuff. Well, Denzel, I want to thank you for joining us and wish you the very best luck. Whoever the next opponent is, Felix Cash, if you're watching this, you need to get on an interview and say you want the fight, basically, because that's what Denzel's being polite, but what he's saying is he's telling everyone he wants it, but you haven't said the same yet. So let's hear it.
I'm just speaking the facts. I ain't saying anything that you know that no one hasn't seen. So
Denzel,
we can always rely on Denzel for the facts.
Thank you, Denzel, for joining us, and hopefully in the future, whenever your next fight gets announced, we'll bring you back on the show.
All right, nice one. Thank you.
So, man, cheers, Denzel.
All right, take care.
Danny, it's been a bit of a roller coaster so far this show. We've had a bit of teething problems with some of the guests, but you know, it seems to be flowing quite nicely. The next topic, if you can introduce that to the people that are watching this.
I'm glad to, mate. I'm glad to. It's starting to feel like a bit of an award show. The nominees are. So basically, something we wanted to talk about was that after Luke Campbell lost to Ryan Garcia not too long ago, there seemed to be a bit of a narrative that sprung up on social media, particularly first in the US and then kind of came over to the UK, as things often do, about British trainers and not being as good as their American counterparts. This kind of idea that we've perhaps been left behind. We thought to discuss this, we'd get 2 of the UK's foremost trainers to come on and talk to us. And one of them, I believe, is here now. So you'll have to let me know if everyone can see Don Charles just yet.
Not at this present time, but once he does come on, I'll let you know. But whilst he's just coming onto the show, what we can do is we'll obviously introduce the segment. Like you said there, after the Ryan Garcia fight, there was a lot of criticism in regards to UK trainers, which I felt was unfair. But just discussing this topic a little bit, Danny, what did you make of the? Actually, we have got Don's just joined us, so let's just bring Don in.
David,
Don coming in as Liam Walsh, but yeah, Don Charles, how are you, sir?
I'm very well, thank you. Can you hear me?
can hear you perfectly, can see you perfectly. How is life treating yourself?
Life is good in the sense that you have to make the best of every situation. Obviously, the current climate generally worldwide is not good with this pandemic we're going through. Obviously, apart from that, I'm good. Personally, I'm good.
And it seems also like our own Ali Drew has once again risen from death, or you know, come back from the ashes. I'm mixing up my metaphors. Ali, can you hear us?
I'm not sure she's dead, Danny, to be honest.
I think I've spoken too soon.
So, Don, we were just discussing a topic that arose after the Ryan Garcia-Luke Campbell fight. Danny introduced the segment just then where there was some criticism about UK trainers after the fight, first coming from stateside from the US, and then it seems to be a little bit of a narrative that's been brought forward in the UK. What do you make of this sort of narrative that's been brought forward after that fight?
Well, it's actually the first I've heard of it, which is quite alarming, taking into consideration the two number one and number two heavyweights and world champions in the world right now are both trained by British trainers, if I'm correct. Anthony Joshua and my apologies, Tyson Fury is trained by Kronk Sugar Hill. Yeah, but prior to that, he was trained by his uncle. Prior to that, after his uncle, he was trained by Ben Davison. And Sugar Hill was brought in for the second Wilder fight. But I will contest that opinion from the Americans because they're the ones who, not so long ago, they've only just seized power. I'm talking about heavyweights, and then we'll go through the other weight categories. They've only just recaptured like the heavyweight title from since Deontay Wilder came of age, and then we start talking about because obviously whoever's got the heavyweight champion rules. All the through history of boxing, all the lightweights, the middleweights, the welterweights, the lower weight divisions, they always carry boxing through the difficult times of boxing where, you know, the major interest is usually when there's a special heavyweight dominating the heavyweight division, then suddenly there's a sudden interest, a wider interest for the general public. So the Americans, before they start making that judgment, for the last 10 years, for instance, Britain has never produced so many world champions in different weight categories. So I don't know why that argument cannot actually stand from their side. We will contest that strongly.
Danny?
Are we here?
Yeah, we're here. I think Uni was waiting for me to come in. I was waiting for Uni to come in. We're still in the early days of our partnership, so we're
I did end abruptly. I sort of speak, and then I sort of, you know me, I've always got a lot to say. So it's the first I've heard of that argument, in the sense that that's what they're claiming. They can claim, nobody says they can't. They've got every right to assume, or that's your own opinion, but I definitely, for one, don't agree with that.
Don, do you feel there's like a typical British/European style of training or style of boxing?
There used to be, but what's happened with the aid of the internet today, every young amateur professional has got access to a computer. Everybody's got a mobile phone. People are watching. Fighters are developing at a rapid speed because they're not just waiting for their coach to show them a certain move or a certain technique. They're studying, they're doing homework, they're studying. There's many good boxers worldwide. So like I said, information is shared or readily available and shared very easily in this modern time. So the people are not just waiting to only learn what their coach is teaching them. They're going away and doing their own research on certain fighters. So you find in fighters, the styles have amalgamated over the years because it's hard to tell, to differentiate from a typical European fighter to that of an American fighter. That's my own observation. So it's never, from my experience, through watching boxing since I was as young as 12 years old. I've been watching boxing. I've noticed before you was able to tell who was from who, from where. But now it's hard to differentiate that. Do you know what I mean? So everybody's stylistically, it's hard to identify the background of most boxers because people are watching.
Don, just wanted to ask you then, there's a few young trainers who are coming through and making a name for themselves. We mentioned Ben Davison just there. He seems to be, you know, making his name with Tyson Fury. You know, he was doing bits with Billy Joe Saunders at that time as well. Obviously with Josh Taylor and other fighters. We've also got Shane McGuigan, who recently had Luke Campbell fight Ryan Garcia. But he's got a plethora of fighters that seem to be or will be challenging for world titles, especially someone like Lawrence Okoli. What do you make of these two trainers, just these two trainers, the two young trainers that are coming out and making their name in the UK as UK trainers?
Yeah, they're doing tremendously well, you know, because again, what I said earlier on supports that. Yeah. These young coaches without, let's say, any experience, and then they found themselves in these top jobs they get given, and they're not fazed by it. Like Shane McGuigan, for instance, in his short time of being a coach, he's gone through George Groves, David Hay, Josh Taylor, you know, and Carl Frampton, and you know the list is endless. And he's done a very good job on every single one of those fighters that I've just mentioned. He's been able to deal with it, and also don't forget the pressure that comes with it, you know. And he's a young man, and to manage this, or to manage to be able to train these guys. Remember, they don't just bring who they are; they bring ego. They bring a lot of things, yeah. And for such a young man, a young head, you know, we don't speak about it enough. I'm personally very pro British trainers because we don't recognize each other as well as the Americans, let's say, for instance, recognize each other. Yeah. But we're very, very ready to praise and worship. Well, I don't. I'm an exception. I don't, not because I'm arrogant. I'm just very confident, always have been. Yeah. I've been saying it for years. We're very, very quick to praise the Americans, but we don't praise our own. And I think it's about time. Coming back to Ben Davison, again, he got literally thrown into the job that he did with Tyson Fury. Let's face it, who did Ben Davison train prior to getting that big job? He trained a guy called Tom Little, yeah? Based on who he had trained, he hadn't trained any Southern area champions, no English champions, no British champions. And he got thrown into that big, huge job. And guess what? He did it remarkably very, very well with it. Hence why his name got established overnight. Can I also add, there are hundreds, I'm not exaggerating, of such trainers around in England, yeah, who don't get that recognition, that break. Okay, there's so many coaches around in the UK. I see most of them because being an owner of a gym and a trainer myself, you get to see these people coming through. You know, I think more chances should be given to these coaches. British, it's almost like the life of football, for instance. Yeah, if we couldn't use that sort of an example. Yeah, homegrown. We need to recognize our own and stop worshiping people. Not because the people, you're Americans and you're South Americans. Not because they're very good, but we should also recognize the homegrown talents from the boxers to the coaches. We've got so many young coaches coming through. And I think it's about time we start recognizing them and appreciate, and for them to be getting the jobs that would normally, let's say, go to the established trainers. I think they should be given a chance to be given these jobs.
Don, just finally onto yourself then. 2021, we know you're training a couple of fighters. What's it looking like for your fighters at this present time? Is there any news on when they're getting out?
Well, the same as everybody else, we're in the same boat. We're just waiting, obviously. The indication is we're looking round about end of March, April, for anything to be realistic. The way the climate is, we have to obviously listen. It's all down to what the government are saying, and you know, me personally, I think when you take an educated guess, you're probably looking at April period, springtime.
Okay.
Yeah, we spoke to George earlier, Don, as you know, for one of the earlier segments. It's a huge year for him, isn't it?
Well, he has to really. He's my son. Yes, I'm his trainer. Yes, I am. But he has to. He's got a lot of ground to make up. He's a late starter. 28 years old. By now, at the age of 28, he should be contesting for minimum European, in some cases, world titles, because he's so behind that. We literally will have to race him to get him to make up the lost years.
Cool. Don, I want to thank you very, very much for coming on to this part of the show. There's no doubt we'll actually be calling you along at some point again. We know that you've joined us for the watch-alongs before, and we'll hopefully get you back onto this show at some point in the future. So thank you very much for joining myself and Danny.
My pleasure. It's always a pleasure. And Danny's my sparring partner. Verbal sparring partner.
Only verbal. He's never going beyond verbal.
Seconds out. Ding, ding.
Thank you.
All right, good.
Take care.
Bye.
Take care, Don.
Danny, we're on to the final part of this show.
Woo! We made it.
Where we're going to be discussing the pound for pound listings. I know it's very subjective. People have their own opinions on it. And the reason why we wanted to bring this up right towards the end is because it's so subjective. You know, at this present time, we are going to try to get Umar Sadiq on, who's actually abroad at this present time. So he's trying to come on. We're hoping that works out. But we brought in somebody who's very well versed, somebody who's been around in the boxing industry for a long time. He's a commentator. I'm sure he's done a bit of writing in the past. But he's well known in the industry and very well respected. It's none other than Andy Clark. Andy, thank you very much for joining us.
No problem, fellas. No problem.
That was some intro, wasn't it?
It was great. Yeah, I was loving that.
I'll take my 20 quid later, mate. You can transfer it over later. Andy, thank you very much for joining us. First of all, we're in lockdown again. How's life treating you at this present time?
Pretty much the same as it's treating most other people, I would imagine. It's the boredom is really the only thing I could kind of pick out that I would have any justification, I think, in complaining about, because throughout this whole thing, I've been lucky. I've not really been affected by it. I don't know anyone who's had it really badly. I don't know anyone who's passed away from it. And it hasn't really impacted on my life other than my income. And it's impacted on so many people's incomes. Other than that, I've got through it, or am getting through it, pretty unscathed. And you've got to be thankful for that if that's the situation you're in.
Of course, and before we continue, we hope that everyone's staying safe, and if anyone has got family members who have got COVID, our prayers are with them, our thoughts are with them. But Andy, we brought you on to such a subjective topic in regards to the pound for pound rankings. There's been a lot of people online just go back and forth on this topic forever. But in your eyes, first of all, what do you make of this whole pound for pound thing?
Well, it is really interesting and it's fun. The pedant in me, the rational, logical, facts and evidence man in me, and I am one, basically leads me to conclude that ultimately it's pointless, because weight divisions exist for a reason. It's a cliche, but it's true. And also, if you're trying to work out who the better fighter between two boxers is, between two individuals is, then you would judge that by who would win if they had a fight. So if a heavyweight fights a lightweight, it doesn't matter how technically good the lightweight is, the heavyweight would win. Therefore, the heavyweight is a better fighter, because were they to fight, the heavyweight would win that fight. So with that regard, it doesn't really make any logical sense. You can, I think, compare who is the better technical boxer and assess those skills and look at that, because you can look at all sorts of facets of that and come to, I think, an informed and educated opinion. But I've just kind of summed up there, really, in listing my objections to it, why this is as subjective as it is. And what I find really interesting about it is that with normal rankings, with individual weight divisions. I'm very much a kind of body of work man. There is an expiry date on work. You know, it doesn't remain as valid forever as it did at the time it was done. But with pound for pound rankings, you are obviously, of course, to a large extent guessing, and you have to try and decide how much weight you give to something that's really recent, as opposed to how much weight you give to something that's been achieved in the past in a different weight division, which they're not going to revisit. We could tie ourselves in knots about it all afternoon, and people argue about it strenuously, and that's good because, you know, we need things to argue about at the best of times, but definitely at the minute.
Just before we continue with you, Andy, we've actually got Umar Sadiq on the line, so let me just introduce him. Umar Sadiq, all the way from Mexico, I think. You're in Mexico training out there, aren't you? Is that correct?
Sí, estoy aquí en México entrenando duro.
There we go. Umar, how are you, my friend? How's things out there? We're in lockdown at this present time. How's things out in Mexico?
I get it. I'm good, man. Everything's blessed out here. I came out to Playa del Carmen, which is a town next to Cancun.
Okay.
And it's beautiful. I literally just woke up, by the way. Well, not just woke up. I just got out of a meditation after waking up. So it's the morning here. It's about 9 a.m. thereabouts, or just past. And I found a nice boxing gym that welcomed me in. So I'm getting a lot of work done out there. And then around that, you just do what you do when you're in a, tropical climate. Go to the beach and all of that stuff. Eat good food.
Umar, we're actually talking about the topic of pound for pound. I just asked Andy his sort of opinion on what he thought about the whole pound for pound thing. But before we ask you, what's the latest with yourself? Have you got anything lined up in regards to dates for 2021 or when you're next fighting?
Yeah, just all super middleweights be on notice. So after my last fight, as you guys know, but some of the viewers might not, I had a bit of a headache, an unusual headache that I usually I haven't had before. So I just asked my team to go to the hospital just to make sure they were all good. Okay. And it said that there was the report from the brain scan, MRI scan, was that I had a mild hematoma, which I didn't know what was. So basically, it's a bruising to the surface of the brain, but not the actual brain, but tissues that go over the brain. So because of that, the boxing board suspended my license until they continued to. I don't really understand the process, to be honest, but I've felt fine since. It's just it's a formality that I've had to deal with, which has meant that I've been out of the ring since September. And I was waiting for the board to let me know when to have a new scan. And they did that at the end of November. So I took one in December. The clinic I went to have given me the results. And the results are that there are no differences between my brain scan that was done in December 2020 to the one that was done in 2019 when I was getting my license in 2019. So that means I'm fine. But the boxing board have their own system, which is old as anything. Because, I mean, I've got the report. It says scans are fine. You're good to go. But now I'm still waiting for the boxing board, and God knows when they actually evaluate and give me back my license. So until that happens, what I'm doing is I'm training, staying active, working on my craft, making sure that I'm using this time wisely so that when I come back, I'm going to be a better version of myself. And, with or without the boxing board, I'm planning to fight before the summer and then hopefully get to come back and fight in the UK by the summer. But that's dependent on the boxing board. What I do know is that I've always said that if for whatever health reasons I'm unable to box, I would stop. But if my brain's kind of identical to the one that it was in 2019, between 2019 and 2020 after the fight, then as far as I'm concerned, I'm healthy. So the boxing board really is what I'm waiting for, and then we can get it cracking.
On our live chat at the moment, someone's already chipped in with their pound for pound list, which maybe gives us a good jumping off point. Quan Big Guns, don't think that's his or her real name, has got Terence Crawford at number 1, Errol Spence at number 2, and that's an argument in itself, and Canelo Alvarez at number 3. So starting with Andy Clark, what do you make of that? Having taken all your objections to pound for pound lists aside, of course.
So I mean, my top three would be Canelo. I'd have Canelo at 1. I'd have In a Way at 2, I think, and I'd have Teofimo Lopez at 3. And like I said, it's a combination of looking at body of work, but also what people have done recently. And with Canelo, I just think Canelo's the best fighter in the world, bar none. And that's why I would have him at number 1. And he's done a lot in a lot of different weight divisions. And also he did something major this year, beating Callum Smith. I know he did it comfortably, but Callum Smith is a very good fighter, so that was a major win. In a way, he's blazed the trail through 3 different weight divisions now. You look at the way he's done it, the people he's beaten. Lopez is a single weight category operator, but he beat Lomachenko, who was previously in my top 3. So that's why he goes in on the grounds of that single but huge achievement. With someone like Crawford, for me, he hasn't done enough recently at welterweight to crack that top 3. His super lightweight work, obviously, is stellar, and he won a world title at lightweight too. And that counts, and it will always count because he's not going to go back down to those weights. But he hasn't done anything big at welterweight yet. He's won a world title, but he's not done anything really big. Spence, I would put above Crawford at welterweight because he's done more at welterweight, but then he doesn't have the work in the other weights. So those two would be outside my top 3 for that reason, really. And someone like Usyk is quite an interesting case too, because brilliant at cruiserweight, unified the division, fantastic. But he's got to do something a bit more than he has yet at heavyweight for me to put him in any kind of pound for pound list. So you'll probably be in a few people's, and again, it's arguable. But yeah, my 3 is Canelo, In a Way, and Lopez.
You know, I do think that's a good point about Crawford, actually, because when you look at what Crawford's done, he has done it at super lightweight. Coming up to welterweight, we don't even know if he's going to be able to fight the 4-5 fighters that are with Al Haymon. The top 4-5 fighters are with Al Haymon. So it's a bit of a messy situation for Terence Crawford, unfortunately, at this present time. Hopefully something happens and we can see all these big fights happening in the welterweight division, especially between him and Errol Spence. But Umar, let's talk about pound for pound then. Who's your top 3?
By the way, apologies. I had some sort of connection issue, so I missed the last 2 minutes or so of what I said.
It was great stuff as well.
You missed it all, mate.
No doubt with you guys on the panel. Jeez.
Umar, so we were talking about pound for pound listings. Andy's given his. He said Canelo, In a Way, and Teofimo Lopez as the top 3. Who's your top 3 pound for pound?
I can see why he said Lopez because he beat Lomachenko, but Lomachenko was always a questionable top 3 for me, because of the opponents he was fighting and when he was fighting them. But I would say Canelo's undoubtedly number 1. I've always said this actually, even before his last fight, and people would argue with me, but Canelo's undoubtedly number 1.
Yep.
Number 2, I'll go for Crawford. And number 3. Number 3, I don't know. I'll just say number 1 Canelo, number 2 Crawford. Can I sit on the fence with that?
You can, but actually, I'm going to actually then pull out Andy's argument, which is a valid argument, and I'm going to present that forward to yourself. Is that Crawford did all his work, or did his unified the division at super lightweight? Since he's come to welterweight, he's not had the opportunity. He's not fought the fighters to sort of make a dent in the welterweight division. So therefore, in current times, he hasn't done much in regards to winning a world title or whatever needs to happen for him to elevate himself in this division. What do you make of that argument?
I think most things are situational, so the answer is hardly ever black and white. And with Crawford's situation, when he was able to unify the 140 division, he did that, and then he moved up to 147. And it's unfortunate that he's with Top Rank, and all the guys that everyone wants him to fight are with PBC and now Heyman. So, I mean, with that being said, he's done what he's supposed to do with everyone he's boxed so far at welterweight, and dominated convincingly. So it's just a matter of, I think he gets a bye for that one until when he gets to fight the people that were asking for him to fight. That'll be my response to that.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's always a bit of a discrepancy in how people judge pound for pound as well, because it is mythical. Obviously, it doesn't help, but it's whether you base it on ability and potential as a result of that ability, or whether you base it on performance and results. And I think from us, if we're going to base it on performance and results, and that's why you guys have both got Canelo definitely as your number one, and I would have him number one as well, because no one has achieved what he's achieved through the weights, beaten the quality of opposition that he has. But then if you're going on ability, there's probably a lot of people that we're not even talking about in the top three that would otherwise be there.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. But those people, talking about those people, will be even more hypothetical than the pound for pound rankings are. So when you're talking about something that's already complex, I think part of the aim is to keep it as simple as possible. So again, we go by ability or technical ability and actual, achievements in the ring. And for those reasons, again, I've got Canelo. And another thing as well that people speak often about, I think I might have heard Andy talking about earlier, but the connection wasn't great, is when people compare people from different weights. But then I think by definition, that's the whole point of having the pound for pound. It's that we know that they probably won't box each other, but observing how they box and how they perform against their peers. So the way I look at the pound for pound ranking really is rate every fighter individually out of 100, right? And whoever has the highest ratings is pound for pound number one. So if you say that this heavyweight fighter is rated based on the performance and ability 70 out of 100, or no, let's be a bit fair, 85 out of 100, and then you've got a lightweight who you've rated 92 out of 100, then that lightweight who's 92 out of 100 goes higher on the pound for pound rankings than the heavyweight.
This is giving me a great idea to do some boxing top trumps.
Yeah,
what's that?
Left field, but
no, that'd be great. That'd be great. That's a good system, and that's more what I was talking about when I said that you need to kind of look at technical ability and boxing technique and that kind of thing to make an evaluation of who is, in that regard, better than who. And with that in mind, one fighter I didn't mention who would be very close to my top three is Fury, because heavyweights, I would always give heavyweights a pass for not having boxed in multiple divisions, because he can't, to produce sheer size, he can't do it. But you look at his technical boxing ability, coupled with massive wins, and he has to be very close to a top three. I think he'd certainly be very close to mine.
I was actually going to ask that about Tyson Fury, but Umar, then going off that, Tyson Fury, would he then drop into your number three? Do you think he's that fighter that fits your number three, because you're struggling at this present time?
I am struggling, and honestly, I woke up, I did some prayers, I meditated, and I jumped on this call, so I haven't had much time to think. I won't want to say something and then regret after. But I could see Tyson being in the top 500%, and I could also, I could see an argument for Teofimo. I could see Inoue is one that a lot of people agree about. Tyson Fury is another, and there are a few other fighters up there who I think have been doing really good, and I would have to give it a lot of thought. As you guys can tell, I think about what I say. So
cool. There's always like a debate between Fury and Joshua supporters who has the better resume, because there's no doubt Fury's got the better standout wins with those away victories over Wilder and Klitschko. But then a lot of people say, well, Joshua's fought a wider range of kind of B+ level fighters. So then whose resume is better overall? Andy, what do you think?
I've got Fury ahead of Joshua in the heavyweight rankings because he's had bigger wins. And Eddie Hearn's argument that I saw a few weeks ago, as you mentioned, is that Joshua's boxed more top 10 heavyweights. He has. That's true when you look through the record. But I think it is about your biggest wins. What level have you proven yourself to be at? And Fury went to Germany and beat Vladimir Klitschko, who hadn't lost in nearly 10 years, to win the unified titles. And then he went to America and smashed Deontay Wilder to pieces, which at the time was and will remain absolutely sensational. So the fact that Joshua has beaten more top 10 heavyweights than Fury is not something I would deny. And Joshua's done spectacularly well, and I think he's still improving. But I think on the basis of their biggest wins, I'd have to put Fury ahead of him. Had he not beaten Wilder earlier in the year, or had he beaten, say, somebody else, then I wouldn't, because his win against Klitschko was quite a long time ago. But that win against Wilder, and even the draw against Wilder the first time, in a way, if this makes sense, kind of reactivates the win against Klitschko as still counting for a lot. Because prior to that, you could argue, and I did, because I would have taken him out of any rankings when he was inactive for such a long time, that those previous achievements don't get erased from history, but from the point of view of ranking him, they expire. And that Klitschko win had expired, but then he came back and he gave it a new lease of life. So, I mean, I agree with both, but Joshua's resume, top 10 wins is better, but Fury's best wins are better, and I prefer his best wins.
I've got a question for Umar, given we've all got Canelo as our number one pound for pound, and he's currently in your weight class. Who's the biggest threat to Canelo? Who's got the most chance of beating him out of the guys between, I don't know, 160 and 175?
Oh, wow. So 175, you've got some animals in there. And I think there's a good reason why Canelo only went there to fight Kovalev and came back down to 168. So I think the guys, Beterbiev and the likes at 175 would give him lots of problems. At 168, I see Billy Joe being the only, person in the top 10 right now who troubles Canelo. Because, so you've got David Benavidez, who's good, but his opponents have been questionable, and he seems to have a lot of flaws in his game. That being said, there are a lot of fighters who, from the outside, look like they aren't doing much, and then when you're in there with them, it's a whole different thing. So maybe he's one of them. I don't know. I just don't think, or he hasn't had a performance yet, or a victory yet that's made us think, okay, now he's arrived. He's still, as much as he's a world champion, he's still sort of like a prospect, if that makes sense. A very similar thing goes with Caleb Plant. He's very slick, lively guy. I actually really like Caleb Plant as a fighter. So as you guys can hear, the way I'm speaking about people in my own weight division, I'm a massive boxing fan as well. Yeah. But I'll still fight any one of these guys, like in a heartbeat. So Caleb Plant's got a lot going for him. I just don't think that it's enough to trouble the boxing IQ of Canelo and the Reynoso brothers, the Reynoso family, sorry. Because part of their strength seems to be in being able to break a fighter down. I mean, during analysis, and then having a game plan, an effective game plan that nullifies what that fighter does best and exploit the weaknesses. I mean, when you see Canelo gave up so much against Smith, who we tout to be very good. And look how well he nullified what Smith was doing. He even nullified him to a point where Smith wasn't punching at times. And there's no accident in there. There are a lot of nuances in what Canelo does, which is why I've got him at number one. So I'm going on a bit now, aren't I? In short, at super middleweight, it'll be Billy Joe Saunders, because Billy Joe Saunders, I've had boxing conversations with him, and the guy, he knows boxing very, very well. And if anyone's going to be able to pick the holes out of Canelo and make him and his team have to step up their approach to a fight, it's going to be Billy Joe. But then at 175, you've just got some guys that are just beasts. I don't think they'll be as bothered or fazed by the punches that Canelo would hit him with. And then at the same time, when they hit him back, he's going to have to respect what he's getting hit with. I know he's taking punches from Golovkin, but these guys are 2 weight divisions up from Golovkin, and a lot of them are just absolute monsters.
Before we end the topic, and I'd slightly want to move away from the pound for pound thing, you mentioned Sergey Kovalev there, and we've had breaking news come out just within the last 24 hours that he's tested positive for a synthetic testosterone. What do you make of this, Andy, first of all? What do you make of this news breaking out?
it's always not exactly shocking, but it's always disappointing when you hear about somebody failing a test. Although I would argue that when someone returns a positive test and they've been cheating and they get caught, it's something we should almost be celebrating, because we can't fool ourselves that people aren't doing it. If we had a year where nobody tested positive, then it wouldn't mean that nobody's doing it. It would just mean that the testing was inadequate, nobody was getting caught. So there's two ways of looking at it. He's towards the end of his career now, and he will have an explanation for it. I haven't managed to discover what that is yet, but I think the sad thing about it is, a lot of the time, is that this happens, and as boxing fans, people involved and who know how things work, I don't think any of us seriously think that there are going to be any real repercussions for this. He's towards the end of his career. I don't think anybody really thinks that he's going to get hit with any kind of punishment which will have any particular impact on him or really discourage anybody else from doing it. So that's what, I'm painting a fairly bleak, depressing picture there, but boxing has just failed relentlessly to get its house in order when it comes to performance-enhancing drugs and how you treat people who take them. And unfortunately, I don't really see that changing in the foreseeable future.
Yeah, it is unfortunate. Umar, you being a fighter, when you hear high-profile fighters, tested positive for a performance-enhancing drug, what do you make of the whole situation? Like Andy said there, it doesn't seem like things are changing. It doesn't seem like things are going to change. But when you see stuff like this as a fighter, what comes through your mind?
After my last fight, I had to stay in the hospital for a few days, and I had a lot of time to think about boxing and what boxing meant to me, what boxing is, what life is, all the rest of it. And one of the things that hit home with me was that this is really real. I was in the hospital waiting for further assessments because they said I had a mild hematoma. It was the first time I heard of it. I remember laying in the hospital bed and thinking,
I think he's it's a bit of a technical problem at this present time.
It's like tune in after the break to find out what he was thinking.
I mean, hopefully you'll be able to rejoin us and finish that sentence, because that is the key, isn't it? That boxing is a sport, but it also isn't, because it's very, very serious and people get seriously injured and people lose their lives sometimes. And I don't know if I was a fighter, hopefully we can ask him. I don't know if I was a fighter, if I would ever want to fight someone who had tested positive. That'll probably limit your career ambitions if you get towards the top end of the sport anyway, because quite a lot of people have. But I think mentally that'd be really difficult to get in the ring with someone who you know has cheated in the past, and you've got to be thinking they're probably still doing it, or they might still be doing it. And we all know boxers who have boxed people who, after the fight, they won't have said so publicly, but they'll have said his work rate, his strength, his everything, there's no way he wasn't juicing. And we all know people who think they've experienced that, but they've gone into it kind of knowing that was the case. I mean, I don't know how you do that.
I'm back.
So Umar, you were in hospital and you
see how I just... Oh, wait. I was in hospital. Is that what? Did I cut off right at the start of what I was saying?
Yeah. So you're going to have to start that all again.
That was going on for 2 minutes. No, I was just saying, I was in hospital and I was thinking that I'm in here potentially with a life-changing brain injury, or a brain injury that could end my career and I can have to live with for the rest of my life. But it also could have been worse in the ring. Something worse could have happened. And, I could have been a vegetable. I could have lost my life.
I think we're having some technical problems from Umar's side, unfortunately.
Well, he is in Mexico, in fairness.
Yeah, so I think that's going to have to... I'm not sure if he's actually going to come back on. We are trying to get hold of him. It is a live show, and this is the first time we're doing a live show, so we are having a bit of teething problems. Some of the problems, unfortunately, are not in our hands, but we will try to get him back on. Andy, just going off what you were saying, then you talked about a fighter. If you were a fighter, you wouldn't want to fight somebody who's tested positive in the past. When you look at someone like Canelo, then, for example, we know that he tested positive for elevated levels of clenbuterol, but now he is on a 365-day testing, or whatever that testing, WBC testing is. Then, Andy, what would you say to that? If a fighter was to redeem themselves and put them through some sort of thorough testing where they get monitored for the full year, would that open the gates for you to, if you were a fighter, for you to fight a fighter that tested positive?
I think if I was a boxer, then inevitably I probably would end up fighting someone who had tested positive. I think that morally I wouldn't want to. I would feel that they should have been banned from the sport for life, and that should have been then done. Although there are grey areas, and Canelo's case is an example of one. That clenbuterol is a complicated thing, and you're talking trace elements sometimes, and there are different explanations for how they might have got there. But to return to the question, if I were a fighter morally, I would like to. It would be great if you were in a position to say, I'm not going to fight anyone who's tested positive. But realistically, to be in a position to say that, you've probably got to be one of the top names in the sport. Otherwise, you are going to severely limit your career opportunities. But I just think that mentally, it would be a difficult thing to get your head around if you end up in the ring with someone who has failed, and they have failed because they've taken a performance-enhancing drug knowingly. There's no real debate that they've cheated and just got caught. I would find it hard to reconcile myself with fighting that individual, because I just don't think I would have any real faith that they weren't necessarily still doing it, because boxing's punishments regarding it are so laughable.
Umar, then, going off what Andy's saying, would you fight somebody who's tested positive in the past, or would that not go through your head?
I think Andy summed it up right. Most fighters don't have that luxury of choosing. And I guess my line keeps cutting because the powers that be don't want me to say what I'm trying to say. But in summary, what I was trying to get to, was that I genuinely believe that most top athletes, not most, but a large proportion of top athletes, not just in boxing in general, are on something. As someone who's been in boxing for such a long time, I'm not a personal trainer, but I'm qualified as a personal trainer. Did GCSE PE in school, and I've done a lot of studies on, the human body and and I realized that there's only so much the human body can do unless someone's got some sort of deviation in the gene or DNA or something. But then you see all these athletes who look one way one time, and then another time they look completely different, and so many things change. But also, you just look at some athletes and you just look. I think when you're in the industry, you can see when there's either something special about this person or they're on something. And speaking to people and listening to different podcasts and stuff, and just learning things that I've learned, I just believe that a large proportion of top athletes are on something. So I've already accepted that I'm going to fight people that are on stuff. I probably have boxed people. There are people that I've boxed in the past. You guys can decide who you think that could be. But there are people that I've boxed in the past where I thought, this person could be on something. But that's part of the deal when you're an athlete. And unfortunately with boxing, a big part of the aim is you're trying to hurt someone. But I just accepted that I'm probably going to fight people who are on something. And that's why I pay so much attention to the nuances, because for me, that's my equalizer. So you can get as fit, as strong, and as fast as you can, or just whatever you take to help you would help you be. I live a good life. I eat mostly organic unless I'm eating out. I eat clean, don't drink, don't smoke. I'm committed to my craft. I mean, I don't have a license and I'm still in the gym, So physically, I know I'm going to be as good as I'm going to be. And then mentally, I do my work. I just meditate before I came on here. So mentally, I'm healthy. And then from a skill set perspective, I just want to be as nuanced as possible so that I'm able to break things down, which is really why I respect the craft of, you know, the likes of the Tyson Furies, Billy Joes, Canelo, as controversial as that is in this conversation, just people, Lomachenko, people who operate at such a high skill level. Floyd Mayweather, my favorite, because there's so much to learn from them that allows you to then be able to nullify whatever benefits that a person on drugs may gain from what they're taking. That being said, it doesn't mean that it's an easy task, but boxing is what I've chosen to do, and I've just got to make the best of the situation I'm in. We all have our ideals in situation, but this is something I was saying earlier on the line cut. We all have our ideals, but all our ideals are individual to us, and then there's the reality that we all have. So with that being said, I mean, do I want a clean sport? Yes. Do I want all of sport to be clean? Yes. But I think this is bigger than any of us. There's a reason why top athletes hardly ever get done for drugs, and when they do, the sentences are very light. And then you get, you know, people who there's a boxer, I forgot his name. He got done because there was traces of cocaine in his system, and he got suspended for years. And there's traces of cocaine, not even like he was on it hard, but then is cocaine a performance enhancing drug when you're out of a fight? No, it's not. It's just a banned substance. But then you get top rich athletes getting done with all types of things and getting a slap on the wrist. The system's broken anyway, so I don't pay any mind. I just accept that the people with money probably get away with stuff because the testing bodies don't want to deal with getting sued by them because they'll probably go bankrupt. So all us guys who are not at that level, we just need to accept that we're going to have to fight these guys. And then when you get to that level, you can do something like what Mayweather was doing, because now you're in a position of power where you can start requesting Olympic style drug testing for your opponents before you fight them. You know, when you're in a position of power, you can put things in place. But until then, you just got to accept that it is what it is. We can sit and complain and talk about what we want, but the reality of the situation is, I don't think bodies want to catch top athletes or rich athletes, and when they do, the sentences are so light. There really isn't a deterrent. And then for us, coming up athletes, you know, all right, some people might take some stuff, but most of us are clean because, for starters, we can't afford the stuff that those guys are taking. But also, it's just not something that's in our. I should speak for myself. Like, I hear things like Kovalev has been taking, well, he's got done for testosterone. But like, where do you get testosterone from, and how do you know how much to take, and when do you take it, and all that? I have no idea. I'd rather not, because then there's less temptation. But what I'm trying to say is, the guys that aren't at that level, we don't really have the luxury of being able to do those things in the first place a lot of times. So it is what it is, man.
Great stuff. Well, Umar, you've given us a lot to think about. I think it's fair to say as we wrap up the first edition of round one. Just want to thank everyone that's tuned in, and obviously all our guests for joining us, particularly as we're still here, Umar Sadiq and Andy Clark. And Un, always a pleasure to work with you, of course.
Of course. Thank you very much, guys. It's been a pleasure. It's been the first episode of round one. I know we had some
great
teething...
setup, by the way, Un.
Hey? I know we've had some teething problems.
Great setup, your production clip.
Thank you, Umar. I appreciate that. But yeah, just we did have some teething problems in the show, and we are going to get them rectified for the next one. But guys, thank you very much for tuning in to round one, brought to you by Seconds Out. My name's Uni. That's my co-host over there somewhere, Danny Flexen, who's in his pajamas for sure. But yeah, we'll be back soon. Make sure you like, subscribe, do whatever you can to support the channel. And as soon as boxing starts again, or as soon as it's running in the UK again, we will try to get you out the content that you guys deserve, and the sort of content that you guys want to watch on the Seconds Out channel. So yeah, thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.